you can say Henry Fielding, for example. So definitely every time you won't go to check the meaning in dictionary, so it would enhance your habit of inferring meanings from the text. Okay, so that is very much important. So here literature gives you an opportunity to negotiate meanings, okay, to infer meaning, to guess the meaning, okay, what are basically the possible meanings over here. So dear students, here you can have a variety of meanings. You're not just restricted to dictionary meaning only, so you can go in any dimension. So it all depends upon your perception, background, or you can say your experience, okay, the way you interpret the meaning. So with the passage of time you become confident as well, and you can improve your vocabulary. Why literature is important? Due to its cultural value. Okay, let me tell you why culture is important in the formulation of text. So my dear students, when we will be talking about different eras in the history of English literature, so you would see a clear, you can say, depiction of culture of the society on literature. Okay, what basically is the overall environment of the society, what was the typical thinking of the people at that time. Okay, so everything would be there. Stories have been of central importance to the human race even since it began. As far as we can tell, cultures are built on stories, histories, myths and legends, fables, religion and so on. So dear students, here you can see like when you talk about stories, so those stories are about past, okay. So dear students, you get to know about different cultures in those stories, okay. What were basically the trends of any particular society, that is very much present there in the stories. Okay, if students are to understand and participate in the culture to which they belong, they must first learn about the stories that culture has been built around. And while books are not the only kinds of stories out there, there are one of the most important. So those stories are stored in books. So my dear students, you can read out the stories in order to be part of that very culture or society. So stories are very much important. That is your first hand experience about the culture as well. Okay, so stories are not necessarily written. You can say listen to the stories from somebody. So dear students, here you can say like the stories which are stored in form of writing, so those are more authentic as compared to the stories which are told by somebody. Okay, expanding horizons. Okay, so dear students, here you can see like you can have a broader perspective about any culture, any society here. Okay, everyone has a tendency to get so caught up in their own lives that they forget what's going on in the world around them. As children and teens are particularly prone to this. It's the goal of education to expose them to ideas from other cultures, to teach them about the histories and peoples of other times and places. So you can see during the modern era, we are not, you can say, inclined towards reading literature. Why? Because this is a very busy world, and you can say we don't have much time to listen to the stories, to read out the stories as such. So in order to make your children aware of something, so definitely developing a reading habit is very much important. Okay, so in this way, when you teach them literature, or when you ask them to read out literature, so definitely it would expand their experiences, and it would be very helpful for them when they experience the same thing in future. Okay, building vocabulary, as I told you when we were talking about the advantages of teaching literature, so definitely this is a very important point. Okay, building vocabulary. Having a large and wide-ranging vocabulary is essential for a number of reasons. It helps with both writing and reading abilities, of course, but it also allows for more complex discourse. The larger your vocabulary is, the more in-depth and thoughtful discussions you can have on important topics and issues, both in and outside of the classroom. When people speak, they tend to use a fairly limited vocabulary, so the best way to become exposed to new words is to read. So dear students, when you read out literature, so definitely it expands your vocabulary, okay, and then you can have more useful discussions, debates on any particular kind of topic, so there won't be any kind of repetition in your discussions as such. So how can you enhance your vocabulary? That is by reading literature, okay. So you can build up your vocabulary, you can have you'll be able to comprehend the things in more complex discourses as well, like when there are certain situations when you think the language which is being used, that is very complex. So if you are visual of reading literature, so definitely it would be very much helpful for you to understand those discourses, okay. So dear students, what do we mean by discourse here? That is basically language in use, okay. So dear students, by keeping in view all these things, you can see that how literature is important in your life, okay. Improving writing skills, as I told you, like reading literature, that would enhance your vocabulary, so ultimately it would improve your writing skills. As you know, reading is a receptive skill, so it provides the basis for writing skills. So my dear students, in order to improve your reading skills, you have to be good in reading the things as well. Writing skills can be taught to some extent, but the number one way to become a better writer is to read often. When you read, you are being immersed in language in the way it sounds and feels when put together in the right ways. Students who are encouraged to read have a more intimate knowledge of the ways in which language works, and so have an advantage when it comes time for them to write. This fact can even be made transparent by encouraging students to try writing in a particular book or author style. So dear students, you might have seen people around you, like those who are good in writing, they are definitely good in reading as well. So reading provides you the basis for the writing skills. So in order to adopt any particular kind of style, definitely you'll have to read. In order to enhance your vocabulary, you have to read. So literature is very much important in order to have a first-hand knowledge of the language, plus to enhance your vocabulary and to improve your writing skills. Literature is not just teaching for the sake of teaching, it evokes your critical thinking, okay. So basically when you teach literature, that is teaching critical thinking, okay. Education is supposed to give students the tools they need to become a valuable part of society, and one such tool is the ability to think critically. We want them to not just passively consume whatever is around them, but to analyze and criticize it as well. Literature serves this goal in a couple of ways. Many novels encourage critical thinking on their own due to the issues and themes they explore. So dear students, literature leads you towards critical thinking. So when you analyze something, when you are an active observer of the things while reading anything, definitely it evokes your critical thinking here, okay. So literature is not just for the sake of pleasure purposes, like you are reading it for enjoyment only. It evokes your critical thinking, it you can say it develops your creativity as well, okay. So here dear students, like you can see while analyzing a novel or while reading a novel, so you can challenge the things, so there is an element of resistance here while reading literature as well. So dear students, as you know, literature is a valuable part of society, so definitely you can have more experiences of life while reading literature. As I told you before, like when you read literature, so that becomes part of your background memory, of your, you can say, of your long-term memory as well. So definitely with the passage of time, when you face any kind of problem in your life, so literature would be very much helpful for you at that time. So my dear students, these are some of the benefits of teaching literature. Just to remove your confusion over here, you might be thinking what is basically the purpose of teaching you history of English literature or literature. So I told you some of the benefits of teaching you history of English literature or English literature otherwise. So my dear students, one of the most important benefits of teaching you history of English literature is that you will be familiar with the different writing styles and different themes which were present in different eras in the history of English literature, plus the development of English language and English literature with the passage of time in different centuries. So we'll take a start from the ancient phase in the history of English literature, and then you can see till today how far English language has evolved, plus English literature. So dear students, basically the focus would be on you can say the development of English literature and the different trends which are common in any particular society, and how those trends are different from any other era in the history of English literature. So these are some of the points which you have to keep in mind while studying English literature. Okay, so dear students, literature is not just for you can say the sake of studying any course. Okay, so this it would be very much helpful for you as far as your daily life is concerned, because with the passage of time, when you read out literature, so it becomes part of your long-term memory. So when you experience something in your future, so definitely you take help from that background memory. Okay, my dear students, so far I just wanted to build your background knowledge of literature, the questions which might be confusing for you. Okay, my dear students, so far we have talked about what are basically the objectives of teaching this course to you people. As I told you, this is not just a chronological account of looking at different dates, in history, and go back to the medieval ages or the Renaissance period or something. So my dear students, you at this moment you'll be confused about these terminologies which I am using, okay, about medieval literature or about Renaissance or Elizabethan age, or you can say the Restoration period. So because you might not be familiar with these ages so far. So my dear students, what we have discussed so far, that is about objectives of this course. What is basically the purpose behind teaching this course is to make you aware about English literature, along with its historical development with the passage of time in different centuries, plus we'll focus on different ages, okay, or different periods in the history of English literature as well. So we'll look at just sociological factors of that very society, along with the cultural factors, plus the religious debate that was going on in any particular society, okay, and the political circumstances of the country as well. Then we'll see like how those factors, like literature is at the center of the table, and all these factors, they are very much involved in creation of literature. So while analyzing, my dear students, any literary work, by keeping in view all the factors which are involved in the creation of literature, so the things would be very easy for you to understand. So my dear students, again you would be confused that why we are studying the history of English literature, why not anything which is which is practical or which is applicable in today's society. So my dear students, basically you could see, like when you know the historical context, what was basically happening in any particular century, so definitely it would formulate your thinking about literature, and it would really be helpful for you in analyzing any novel, any poem, any drama, or any essay. So everything would be helpful for you. So my dear students, again I just want to develop your critical thinking over here, okay, like there must be an element of creativity over here when we talk about history of English literature. Okay, so I'm just setting your background knowledge relevant to English literature. So this course would really be helpful for you when you will do the analysis of different genres in English literature. Okay, overview of the lecture today. In this class we will discuss what basically literature is, okay, and then history of English literature, periods in the history of English literature, and then the division of those periods. My dear students, we'll just take a start from the definition of literature, okay, and then we'll go particularly for what history of English literature is, and certain ages are there, certain, you can say, certain periods are there in the history of English literature, because that is comprised of too many centuries. So we have given those centuries and those eras, specific eras, certain names. So my dear students, here we'll just talk about English literature in general terms, okay. So my dear students, history is the biography. On the other hand, when we talk about literature, so that is the autobiography, because nobody else writes autobiography. That is the person himself who writes it. So in order to look at the culture, or you can say the sociological issues of any society, so that is the true reflection of the society. On the other hand, you can say like many events which are important in history, so somebody can just talk about those events only. So here, my dear students, when you talk about literature, for example, poetry, novel, drama of any specific era, so that is the autobiography, because it speaks itself about that very culture, okay. So when you talk about different nations of the world, so definitely again, if you want to know about them, so literature serves the purpose of autobiography, okay, like what basically is there in that very society. So for example, in order to know about English nation, so what are basically the characteristics of that nation, so you could see it in autobiography plus in biography, that would be present in history and literature both, okay. So what is literature? That is expression of life in terms of truth and beauty. So my dear students, what basically literature is, then we'll move towards history of English literature. What is basically that history? Literature basically is the expression of life. So in the very first line, you could see this is the expression of life, okay, and in terms of truth and beauty. Literature is a true depiction of life, okay, so that is based on the facts and figures of the society along with the beautiful elements of the society. So my dear students, here this is a very optimistic approach towards studying literature, okay. So basically, my dear students, this is a written record of man's spirit, thoughts, inspiration and emotion. So my dear students, here we are talking about man again. Previously that was life, so here this is man. So this is a written, you can say, record of man's spirit, okay, about his emotions, aspirations and you can say thoughts as well. So in order to know about any nation, so definitely if you read out the literature relevant to that very nation, so you could see like the common thoughts or the common emotions of that very nation in that form of literature, okay. So what are basically the qualities of literature? So we talked about literature roughly, like what basically literature is, okay, so that is a true depiction of life. So literature and life are part and parcel for each other. If something which is not lively, or you can say which is a dead thing, so we cannot say that is literature. So this is about society, this is about culture, this is about people, this is about human natures, and this is about human behavior, this is about human relationships in the society. So literature is what that is life. So my dear students, here you can see like these are three qualities of literature. This has an artistic quality, so this is a work of art, so definitely it is written in a specific manner, okay. So my dear students, you'll be thinking that how can we say that literature has the suggestive quality? For example, as you could see, like it is based on the experiences of other people. So literature definitely guides you, it definitely suggests you what to do and what to do, not to do. For example, when we talk about Shakespearean tragedies, so my dear students, like when we talk about Greek tragedies or Shakespearean tragedies, so in that way you'll get to know about different characters, like if they do something wrong, so what would happen to them. So definitely it would be very helpful for you to take any kind of decision in your future based on your experience. So my dear students, literature is interactive as well. This is not something which is passive and you keep on reading and you don't get anything. So the reader's response is also very much important. So basically that with the passage of time, when you with the passage of time cut kar dein. So my dear students, when you read literature, so that becomes part of your long term memory, and you could say you start saving the things in your mind. So next time in your future, when you are in that kind of trouble or when you are in that kind of context, so definitely you'll be able to use your background knowledge over there. So this is basically an exercise as far as your background knowledge is concerned. Okay, so my dear students, here you'll be thinking like why this permanent quality is very much essential for making any piece of writing literature. I just want to clarify this concept with an example. For example, when you read Shakespearean tragedies, for example, or when you read Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, for example, or you can say All the World is Staged by Shakespeare, so definitely it would be there in your mind for years. Okay, this is one thing that is relevant to a reader. For example, if any reader is not interested in any writer, so definitely that is not having any kind of permanent quality. My dear students, I'll relate this concept with another one, that is an element of universality, and we'll go for that one, so we'll relate it with this one. My dear students, permanent quality means like with the after centuries or after many years, that piece of literature would be very popular. Okay, popular in a sense because that is a depiction of the real life of the people. So definitely it would be universal and it would be there in that society or worldwide for a certain period of time. That is why after many years we can say like that part of writing is literature or not. So my dear students, by keeping in view these three qualities of literature, we'll move forward. Okay, tests of literature. How can you say that anything is literature or not? Okay, 2 points are very much important. One is universality and the other one is style. My dear students, by keeping in view universality, the previous one, permanent quality, here literature is universal. It is not restricted to any particular region. It is not restricted to any specific period of time. So my dear students, when you talk about literature, even literature that was written back in 18th century, 16th century, so that is still even popular today. So my dear student, this is an element which should be there when we call any piece of writing literature. The other one is style. As far as style is concerned, so every literary genre has its own particular style. Although we cannot say that style is very much restricted to that genre, and we cannot violate the rules of any literary genre. So this is not necessary, but literature, you can test literature on the basis of universality, that it is universally accepted. For example, when you talk about English literature, so we are living in East, we are living in South Asia, so that is a product of Europe, my dear student, but still it is you can say commonly used literature over here in South Asia as well. Okay, so as far as style is concerned, for example, you can say like any writing is a piece of literature if that is written in an appropriate style. For example, when you talk about Wordsworth's style, so you could see like his style is quite romantic, or the themes which he has adopted in his poems, so those are relevant to beauty, to nature, to human relations, to human nature most of the time. So basically you can test literature on the basis of universality and on style. Okay, so my dear students, here we use literature in order to teach our students. For example, this is, you can say like what is basically the purpose behind teaching English literature is that like we are promoting English language, plus English society or English people, they are also trying to be more powerful in the whole world. So by spreading up literature, you can be powerful. Okay, and you can promote your language, plus you can promote your writings, your writers, okay. But apparently when we discuss what are basically the objectives of literature, so these are two purposes. One is to teach and the other one is to delight. This is for pleasure purposes, okay. What are basically the aims in studying literature? This is to know about human beings, to know about their souls, to know about their actions, okay, in any particular era, okay. So basically, my dear students, through characterization you could see, like we talk about certain human beings, we like any character, we do not like any character, we hate, sometimes we hate characters as well. So what is this? That is the representation of reality in terms of literature, in terms of written words, okay. The other thing is to know about their souls, okay. So my dear students, here I am referring back to the previous point, that is what basically are the aims in studying literature. So this is a true depiction of life. This is about human beings, this is about their attributes, this is about their nature, and about their relationships in the society. So here this is basically about human beings. This is about to know about their souls and to know about their deeds and actions. For example,